This demonstration video show you how to make this beautiful watercoloured card simply by using this fantastic sort of meadow stamp from Memory Box. I nearly forgot who it was then. So this is one of the Memory Box big, and this is a 6x6 cling rubber stamp. So it's already mounted with the design on the back, so you can see exactly what you're doing. And it also means you can use this in your press, but you can also use this just onto your magic mat and press card onto it because it's got the cling background onto it. So it's really, really simple and easy to use. And this is this week's special offer on the Art of Craft. And I believe this is priced really competitively at just £12.99, which is a crazy price for a large stamp like this. But check out the link underneath the video to see the full range that goes with this, because I'm going to be using this. I'm also going to be using watercolour card. So I'm going to be using watercolour card as opposed to normal stamping card. I'm also going to be using in this our clear embossing ink, a clear embossing powder, as well as black VersaFine ink as well, to give us a beautiful place to actually watercolour onto without it splaying out. So we're going to get started with this one. So I'm going to use my Press to Impress, and my Press to Impress is designed for clear stamps and for rubber stamps as well. And when you're using rubber stamps, all you do is take the foam out. So whether you've got the new white foam or you've got the original one with the black foam in it, we just take that out. I've actually cut up a piece of my magic mat to fit in here. So this is the Crafts 2 sort of multi-purpose mat, but it creates a non-slip, non-sort of sticky mat to actually fit in. And that helps keep the card in place. So what we want to do now is to cut a piece of card to fit. And with a stamp like this, you want to cut a piece that's going to fit exactly. You don't want to be trimming it down afterwards. So we've got a piece of card that's cut to sort of 6 inches by 6 inches. We're going to trim it down slightly afterwards. So I'm going to take a piece of the watercolour card and cut this down to just over 6 inches by 6 inches to give me space to allow it to cut properly, to allow the stamp to sort of put on properly. And I'm simply going to put that a little bit away from each corner, which is why I'm using my non-slip mat to make sure it doesn't move. Whilst you're actually putting this together, if you want to, you can add your magnets in, but I find it a lot easier just to use the mat because it's exactly the same size. I'm just going to place the stamp down and pick that. But as you can see, the card stays in place because of the piece of mat that's in there. So what we want to do is we want to emboss this so that we actually have a well. But we want to do this in black, and just doing it with a standard black pad will actually, the powder won't stick very well. So we're going to take our clear embossing ink, and this is what I call my dirty pad. So I have a clean pad for doing clean embossing, and one I use that's quite dirty for when I'm doing this sort of technique or I'm doing other techniques. And I just want to make sure that I ink over the stamp everywhere, making sure that I just go down. I don't want to be rubbing the pad on here at all, because obviously you've got large areas that can pick up excess ink that you don't want. So I give it a coating first of our embossing ink. Then I give it a coating of black VersaFine or whatever stamping ink in black you like to use. So if you want to use something like VersaFine Clair, that stays open quite long and can emboss quite well. So I'm just going to ink the stamp as normal. I don't have to worry about it drying on the stamp. And the best thing to do is to check and make sure that you've got no spare. When you're dealing with a large stamp, it's not as easy as the smaller stamps. So you just want to take that little bit of time and care. So I'm just making sure that anywhere I've got any excess ink on that stamp, I'm just wiping it off with a clean cloth. And then simply close my press, and using my presser tool, just make sure I will press that down really, really well. And I get a good impression through, just like that. And as you see, because I've used the mat, The mat will move if I pull it, but the card stays in place. It stays stuck in place. The other thing to do with a large stamp on cling like this is to make sure you take it off when you've finished with it. You don't want to leave it in your press, as they can sort of end up sticking after a while. So there's my piece. And although this has got black ink on it, and you're supposed to be very quick, I don't have to be, because I've put the embossing ink on as well. So all I need to then do is take clear embossing powder. I'm using Eyes Ink, but whichever sort of clear embossing powder you've got. The thing is, if you use a black embossing powder with this, you'll get a very thick line. And you don't want that thick, heavy line. This is quite a delicate image. So you want to have quite a delicate line, which is why I use that technique. Pop my excess back. And then I simply then need to heat set. So I'm using my heat gun. I'm putting it on first to make sure it comes up to temperature. You want to make sure your gun is at a hot temperature, just like an iron, before you go into your card and paper. If you don't do that, what you'll actually find is that the card will curl as it overheats. So once I'm happy it's hot, simply start in one area, and as you can see, hopefully, as this is going on, the lines go from a sort of muted grey to a solid black. And I'm holding the piece so that it doesn't connect with the desk. If it connects with the desk and it's down flat, then the card can sweat and a little bit of moisture can come out of the card, certainly on watercolour card, and you don't want that, as it can affect your finished results and warp your card even more. So hopefully as you're watching you can see that the whole image now is coming back to being a bright black with a very fine line. It's a very, very useful technique, this, to make sure that you get a beautiful embossed piece just like that. I'm leaving it a good 2 or 3 seconds. Check, I can spot a little area there that hasn't embossed, so I'll check anywhere. Once I'm happy, I've given it a couple of seconds, it's cool enough to actually touch. And what we want to do now is to colour this. So to colour this, I'm going to use the beautiful Craft Artist watercolour brush pens. You've got 10 pieces in here, automatic sort of flowing brush pens, so you don't have to worry at all about them coming out in the right colour or having to squeeze them or anything. They will just automatically come out, and it's all the colours we need to do a beautiful finished project like this. So I will show you the simple technique I'm going to use. So I'm going to focus on the little flowers down here. So I'm using here, starting with the yellow. And one thing that's really good to do with this is to take yourself a piece of scrap card, place it onto there. Always open your pens and check that they're flowing, that they're not going to flood out on a piece of card. And then I'm simply, but as you can see, because I've created a kind of well, it means that I can colour each of these petals very simply. I can go over the lines and the colour will stay within the space that I've directed. So what I'm doing is I'm sort of doing random flowers of the smaller ones in yellow, because there's a beautiful orange in this set as well. And obviously you can choose and change whichever colours you want to do. And what I tend to do is to do everything of one colour first. As you can see, none of them are stretching outside of the lines, because it's got, there I felt it flow a little bit more, so I'm going to take some excess off. But even that petal that sort of flooded a little bit, it will stay within the space that we've created with that little barrier. So every now and again, if I feel my pen is flowing a little bit too much, I can just take some excess off like that onto the paper. And these are quick drying. And the best thing when you're colouring or watercolouring or anything, don't move yourself, move your work. So rather than give your hand hanging over or something, move your work round so that you're in the right place. And so you're always coming at it sort of from the clean angle. And these are very, very quick drying, so I don't have to worry about how quickly they dry. So there I put in all of my yellow. So next, I'm going to take the next colour, which is my orange. And again, check the colour first. And I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm working almost, I supposedly should say I'm working from one side to the next, but I tend to go in the middle first, which is really wrong. So this time I'm colouring these in orange, but hopefully you can see that I'm not being too careful at all. And I'm just working each colour. So I'm going to carry on and colour all of these in the orange. So these have all been coloured now into the orange, and I've done this sort of big sort of dog daisy flower here. So what I want to do with the orange now is to just add a little bit of tone in. This is where watercolours work perfectly. So all I'm going to do is just pop a little bit of the orange into the centre of each of these yellow flowers. And again, because we've already embossed this, the colour can't sort of leak out. It will just spread itself a little bit on top of the yellow, which is why it works so well using watercolour card for this, because the fibres take the colour and suck it in. It doesn't sit on the surface, so it gives you quite a quicker drying sort of time. You see there we get a beautiful two-tone. And then I'm going to swap, and again check the yellow. My yellow is quite a flowing one, and just add a few little flicks of yellow into the centre of the orange flowers. I'm going to go with a beautiful yellow centre in that daisy there. So just adding a little bit in. Nice and simple. So there's our yellow and our orange flowers done. Next I want to take the lightest colour of green, and again always check it first, and start to fill in some of the leaves. And I'm fully filling these in with this lightest colour. So just up here I'm going to work up each one. But again, because we've created that reservoir, it works absolutely perfectly and stops us going outside the lines. Even like me, you have slightly shaky hands. This is a wonderful way to get a great watercolour look. So all I'm going to do is to carry on and do all of the leaves that are on the whole page in this lighter green shade. So I've gone through now and I've put all those lighter green shades in. So I want to now go over with the next green, which is a sort of mid or darker green. And again, check the flow first. And all we want to do now is almost add in the shading. This is what starts to take it into more of a watercolour. So I'm just adding some where the flowers or where the leaves actually meet the base, or I'm doing sort of half of it. So wherever you feel, just again to give you an almost 3D feel. But what you find is the drawing, or the person who's drawn this, has given you sort of lines, and wherever there are lines is where there's darker shades. So if you're not sure, just add a little stripe on like that. But again here, you can see there's sort of double lines there, so I know, oh, and there's a lot going in there, so I know that will be darker. So it's just a case of going through and adding just a little bit of the darker shade on. And it's as if we've been quite clever with watercolour. And in this demonstration, I'm actually going to show you how we can turn a sort of almost perfect colour into like a watercolour drawing, really, with what we do at the end. So again, just going through anywhere where I've got that sort of bright verdant style green, I'm adding just a little bit as a sort of low light of the darker green. So I've got all of those leaves done. So we're now going to move on to doing our next colour. So I'm going to move on now and I'm going to add in my next colour. And this time I'm going to be using this sort of pale blue. So I'm sticking with colours where I've got almost two tones. So I'm going to use the pale blue and I'm going to use the sort of light darker blue and the purple as well. So again, it's a case of looking and going, right, I think all these little flowers, but as you can see here, I'm going on with really little strokes, just almost letting it flood out a little bit. The paper is dry, so it's not going to leak everywhere. And I'm just colouring in the ones that I think, the sort of smaller leaves or flowers that I think will work perfectly. And I'm just touching into each of the little sort of flower heads, just like that. So I'm now going to go through and just colour all of those in this light blue. As you can see now, I've gone through and I've put all those little mid-level flowers in blue. It's the little sort of heart-shaped sort of petals and the taller ones, leaving a couple free to bring the colours in. So now I'm going to go into my darker blue. And again, check the colour. And this time, I'm going to fill in all of these larger flowers. So what you want to do is just fill them all in, and again, don't worry, you've got that reservoir, so you can run over the lines. It's not going to colour, we're using watercolours, it's not going to colour over the lines that we've created, because we've got that beautiful sort of embossed line. So it's just a case now of going in and putting this blue into all of these larger spaces. So there we've just filled in all those big colours in that darker blue. So I'm simply now going to take the purple colour, and again, make sure I test it. This time I can add the shading in, and this is what again makes it look like you've watercoloured. So again, I know the bottom of the flowers would be darker, so I'm using the purple, and on some of the flowers they've actually put sort of little lines in the centre. So just go through and I'm just colouring in, just gently touching with the edge of the brush. This is why these water brushes are so cool. I've never had a watercolour pen or brush that's got such a fine nib. They're always really, really quite heavy, medium or thick nibs. And you want it to be quite delicate, really. So as you can see there, I've just added, but already from that side to that side, you can see we've got a far more watercolour look. So I just need to carry on and do the other flowers on this side. So you can see there how we've got those beautiful sort of watercolour flowers. And I've got one I left here just to add a little bit of the purple in. And there we've got literally every little bit coloured. But again, it's looking very stark. It's looking very sort of just a coloured image. So the way we can introduce a real watercoloured look to it is by now starting to sort of paint outside the lines. So I'm going to do this using the dark green and the verdant. So I'm going to start with the lighter verdant colour. And what I want to do is just give the impression of the colour of each of the actual sort of stamen or the flower heads. And all I'm doing is running my pen, the fine pen, down each of those black lines, just over the top. But just by doing that, what it does is it gives you that watercolour look. It's actually a very, very clever way of almost making it is hand painted, mainly because if you've sort of hand sketched it and painted it. So I'm just following any of the black lines, and I'm not worrying about you're not going inside a line, you're going outside a line. So just like that. So you see there, it's filled up the top of that flower, but it looks realistic, and it suddenly turns the picture into looking like it's made of watercolour. So here, I'm just going to pop a little bit of the green in and pull it down. The same here, put a little bit in, and then using that fine. It doesn't matter if you get a really thick line, that makes it look more realistic. But if we look on that side to that side, we've suddenly got a far more watercolour looking piece. So I just need to continue that over the whole of it. So you can see here where I've covered anything in that lighter green shade, that had a black line. I've even gone and put a few little dots in where I think there might be a little bit of foliage or things like that. So I'm now going to take this lighter pen and I want to actually ground it. And by grounding it, I mean the image is currently floating. We want to create where the ground is. So I'm just taking the side of my brush and I'm just brushing in over the top a little bit of this lighter sort of verdant green. Not being prescriptive or trying to do it a set way. I'm just putting that in. This is where we need to bring in now our next shade, which is our darker green. And I'm going to do the same there, but not quite as high. And you can see I'm just adding a few little flicks in, just so that we've got almost like a two-tone basic garage, sort of, I want to say garage, and it's not right, basic grounding, if that's the word I was looking for. So we've now got a two-tone, and all I want to do is to just add a few little strokes in of this darker green, so everything's not just in one tone. So up in the top here, I'm just going through, and again, not being careful. You almost want to try and do this almost with an unfocused eye, because what we're trying to do is just fill it and make it look as if it's watercolour. So places down here, I'm filling in a little bit where things are very, very strong. I'm putting in more of that green, but I'm just adding in. So we've got a double tone, a few different places. And it gives us that look as if we've created a watercolour picture. And there we have it coloured, and we have those beautiful tones. And all we need to do to finish this off now is just to trim it down. And this is why I say do it to a sort of a piece around 6 inches, maybe 6 and a quarter, 6 and an 8. So you've got that little bit more space. But as you can see, this is what's so fab about these watercolour pens. They're all dry already. So all I'm going to do is find the edge of the design and chop it down one side. Find the edge of the design on the other and chop it down, and check the measurement. And this is just over 5 3/4. So I want to take a little bit more off this side and make it 5 3/4. And then I want to check this side. Nope. So I want to take that down to where those black lines start. But you see now how that grass works. Take this side and chop that down to 5 3/4 inches. And there we have our hand watercoloured image. So all I would do now is to add a sentiment, and for the sentiment I'm using the other set that we have as the sort of special offer this week, which is this beautiful memory box sentiment that has a little sort of a different, like a silhouette meadow on the bottom, but beautiful, beautiful sentiments on here. Things like happy, sending, sunshine and wildflowers. And I've gone with sunshine and wildflowers on this. So all we would do is mat that onto a larger piece, just like this. Little bit of black to balance out the stitching, or to balance out the stamping, and pop our sentiment on. So there's the version I've just coloured, and there's the original version, but easy to do, and it looks as if you've actually done a whole watercolour, but you've kept the colours distinct. But by adding those little touches of extra colour here and there, it's really made it sing. If you'd like to see more videos on this, then please click onto the YouTube, as we've got another 3 or 4 videos using this stamp and the others in this collection. And if you're interested in any of the products used on this, it's this week's special offer on the Art of Craft. Just go to www.art-of-craft.co.uk.